as part of the memorial to General Scarlett, if I remember rightly. I think that's from the ladies of the parish.
It's 1873, that one, isn't it?
Right, the memorials, or some of them, that one there is a memorial to the Reverend John Rawls, and he was the curate of the church, late 18th century, and it's his picture you can see in the frame at the end there. And he was also headmaster of the grammar school. He did both jobs. Now, at that time, a lot of the... actually, he was only assistant curate because a lot of the curates were what they called absentees. In other words, they took the money but didn't live in Burnley, and they paid somebody else to do the services.
You got that a lot over the country, didn't you?
You got it all over the country.
Yeah.
You got it all over the country. It was a job. I mean, you get this in Jane Austen, don't you? The Reverend so-and-so. It was really a job, not a calling or anything like that. But the most interesting monuments are the ones here. Now, this chapel became what was known as the Townley Chapel, and it was a chantry. Towards the end of the Middle Ages, rich people used to pay for a separate chapel and a priest who would say prayers for their souls to make sure they got to heaven. And this was the chapel that was founded by the Townley family. Now, the strange thing is, of course, at the time of the Reformation, time of Henry VIII, when the Church of England broke away from the Catholic Church, there were a lot of sort of disputes and things, and the Townley family refused to become Protestants. They remained Roman Catholics. The descendants still are today. And John Townley, who lived in the reign of Elizabeth, I've got a picture of him when we go to the back, he refused to go to the Protestant church. He paid an immense amount of money in fines and at one time was imprisoned. So he didn't want anything to do with the new Protestant church. And yet when he died, he was buried here.
Strange, is that?
It's strange. It's always struck me as being strange that although he still was buried in a Protestant church. Now, these are some other Townley memorials. The top one is to Richard Townley. I can't remember his dates, but it was late 17th, early 18th century. And Richard Townley was a very important scientist. He couldn't become a member of the Royal Society because he was a Catholic. But he was appreciated by a lot of other scientists. Now, when you were doing your science at school, etc., did you ever come across Boyle's law? Well, Boyle's law was originally known as Mr. Townley's hypothesis. He really thought it up first of all. This business about gases and pressure. And apparently one of the things he did to prove the difference in air pressure, he boiled water at Townley and then went up Pendle Hill and boiled some more, and it took less time to boil at the top of Pendle than it did at the bottom. And they used to do that when we were at the grammar school. I seem to remember people, science department, trying this experiment. And the other thing that he did, he was the first person that we know of to collect data about rainfall and measure it. Apparently in his bedroom at Townley he had a container, and he collected rain from the roof that came into this container, and then he could measure how much rain had fallen. So he was a very eminent scientist. And when he died, of course he was buried here, and they put up a memorial to him. And underneath it they also put another memorial to his father, Charles Townley. Charles isn't buried here because he was killed at the Battle of Marston Moor during the Civil War between the Royalists and the Roundheads, and his body was never found. But he was added to that one. And then at the bottom here we have another Charles Townley, and he was very important because he collected Greek and Roman statues.
So that cherubim belongs to the bottom one?
No, I think the cherubim belongs to the top one.
Does it? Yeah,
yeah, I think it belongs to the top one.
But you can't tell really, can you, what it belongs to?
No, I would
Yeah, I think it's the top one because...
I would think it belongs to the top one.
Oh yes, it is, you're right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So Charles Townley's collection was one of the collections that founded the collection of the British Museum. So he was pretty important. And if you go to the British Museum today, they do have a Townley collection. But then we come to the strangest one of all. Francis Townley. Right? Now, Francis Townley, again, a Roman Catholic, during the Jacobite rebellion, Bonnie Prince Charlie, etc., if you know about Bonnie Prince Charlie, Francis Townley supported Bonnie Prince Charlie, right, and his army. And when they retreated, Francis Townley defended Carlisle until Bonnie Prince Charlie had escaped. And he was arrested, put in prison, taken to London and tried and executed. And he was one of the last people in the country to be hanged, drawn and quartered. In fact, for a while, everybody claimed that he was the last one, but I think we found a French spy who... and it was a particularly nasty death, was that. But when he was beheaded, they put his head on a spike on Temple Bar. In fact, I've got a picture of that up now. This is what they did. But apparently one of the Townley servants managed to rescue it, and it was taken to Townley Hall. And for many years it was kept in a little cupboard in the chapel. If you go to Townley today and go into the chapel and ask, they'll show you this little cupboard where they open the door, and that was where Francis Townley's head was. Well, of course, the Townley family eventually moved, and it went to the bank. It went to the house in London, I think, first of all, that they had, and then it was put in a bank in London. And then, in 1947, it was brought back here to be buried. But it was actually sent